Imagine waking up tomorrow and every piece of ice on Earth is gone. The Arctic, the Antarctic, every glacier, every ice sheet, all of it. Gone overnight. Sea levels would rise 70 meters. 70 meters. That's taller than a 20-story building, covering entire cities. New York, gone. London, gone. Shanghai, gone. 1/3 of all humans on Earth displaced forever. But here's what nobody tells you about this scenario. The ice melting is just the beginning. What happens after that is far worse. This is what if. And today, all the ice on Earth melted overnight. Stay with us, because nothing will ever look the same after this. First, let's understand the scale of what we're talking about. Earth has about 26 million cubic kilometers of ice right now. That's an almost incomprehensible amount of frozen water. The Antarctic ice sheet alone holds 90% of it. If it all melted, the map of Earth would be completely redrawn. Let's start with what happens to the United States. The entire state of Florida, completely underwater. The East Coast, from Washington, D.C. to New York, submerged. Gone. The Statue of Liberty, visible only from its torch. Houston, Louisiana, the entire Gulf Coast, erased from the map. Now, let's look at Europe. The Netherlands, Denmark, most of Belgium, all underwater. London survives, but only just. The Thames becomes an inland sea. Venice, which already floods, ceases to exist entirely as a city. In Asia, Bangladesh disappears. Completely. All 170 million people displaced. Vietnam loses most of the Mekong Delta, the Rice Bowl of Southeast Asia. Shanghai, Mumbai, Tokyo, Bangkok all face catastrophic flooding. But here's the part people don't expect. Not everyone loses. Some places actually gain new land. Antarctica, now ice-free, reveals a continent the size of Australia underneath. Greenland becomes a habitable island for the first time in human history. Canada and Russia gain enormous new territories of previously frozen tundra. The Sahara Desert, believe it or not, gets wetter from changed weather patterns. New coastlines appear, new islands emerge, an entirely new world map. But reshuffling land is the least of our problems, because of what the ice was actually doing. Ice doesn't just sit there looking pretty, it's doing a critical job for Earth's climate system. It reflects sunlight back into space, acting as Earth's giant mirror and air conditioner. Without ice, Earth absorbs far more heat from the sun than it currently does. This is called the ice albedo feedback loop, and it's terrifying. Less ice means more heat absorbed. More heat means more ice melts, and on and on. Even if we stopped all human emissions tomorrow, this loop keeps running on its own. So the temperature rise from melting all the ice isn't just 70 meters of water. It triggers a permanent new climate state for the entire planet going forward. Average global temperatures would eventually stabilize at around 27 degrees Celsius. That's compared to today's average of 15 degrees Celsius, a 12-degree permanent increase worldwide. Welcome to part 2, the world after the ice is gone. Let's talk about food, because this is where it gets truly devastating. The world's most fertile farmland sits in low-lying coastal regions and river deltas. The Nile Delta, the Ganges Plain, the Mississippi Valley, all submerged. These regions currently feed over 2 billion people on Earth, gone, under 70 meters of water in a single night in our scenario. The global food system would collapse within weeks of this event happening, not months, weeks, because modern supply chains have almost no buffer. Now, let's talk about fresh water. The other crisis nobody sees coming. You'd think more melted ice means more water, but it's the wrong kind. Ice melt feeds into the ocean, salt water, useless for drinking and agriculture. Meanwhile, glaciers currently supply fresh water to 2 billion people globally. Rivers fed by glacial melt, the Ganges, Yangtze, Colorado, would run dry. The Himalayan glaciers alone supply water to 800 million people across South Asia. Without glacial melt in spring, summer droughts become permanent and catastrophic. So we have too much salt water and not enough fresh water, simultaneously. Now, let's talk about what happens to the weather systems of the entire planet. Ice at the poles creates a temperature difference that drives all weather on Earth. No ice at the poles, no temperature gradient, weather systems go haywire globally. The jet stream, which controls weather across North America and Europe, destabilizes. Monsoon patterns across Asia and Africa, which feed billions, become unpredictable. Hurricanes and typhoons form more frequently and get dramatically stronger because warmer oceans provide more energy to fuel these massive storm systems. Some regions would see rainfall increase dramatically, but in the wrong places entirely. The Amazon, already stressed, would receive entirely different rainfall patterns, which could push it past its own tipping point, turning it from jungle to savanna. And if the Amazon goes, there goes 10% of all species on Earth. Now, let's talk about the human crisis, because 2 billion people need to move, and move fast. The largest migration in all of human history, happening simultaneously. Not refugees from one country, but from dozens of nations at the same time. Bangladesh, Vietnam, Netherlands, Egypt, Indonesia, all simultaneously. Where do they go? The land that's left is already occupied by other people. Wars over land and water become almost inevitable within this new reality. The geopolitical world order, built over centuries, shatters overnight. But not everything about this new world is bleak. Some regions actually thrive. Welcome to part 3, winners and losers in the world without ice. Let's start with the unexpected winners, because yes, some do exist in this scenario. Canada becomes one of the most powerful nations on Earth in this new world. The melting permafrost reveals billions of tons of natural resources underneath. New farmland the size of Western Europe opens up across Siberia and northern Canada. Russia gains access to the largest new agricultural zone in human history. New shipping routes open across what was the Arctic Ocean. Arctic trade routes cut shipping times between Asia and Europe by 40%. Nations controlling these new routes hold enormous economic power. Mongolia, landlocked today, could gain coast access through transformed geography. Now, the biggest loser in this scenario, and it might surprise you entirely. The countries that currently emit the most carbon dioxide suffer the least coastal loss. The United States loses Florida and its coast, but gains the Canadian territories. China loses its coastal megacities, but gains northern agricultural zones from Siberia. Meanwhile, small island nations in the Pacific simply cease to exist entirely. Maldives, Tuvalu, Marshall Islands, gone. Completely. Forever. Nations that contributed virtually nothing to climate change erased from the map, while those that burned the most fossil fuels survive and even potentially thrive. The injustice of climate change made painfully visible in this scenario we're exploring. Now, let's talk about what civilization actually looks like in this new world. Humans are remarkably adaptable. We've survived ice ages. We can survive this too. But adaptation at this scale requires generational sacrifice and global cooperation. The survivors would retreat to higher ground. The new centers of civilization, the Himalayas, the Rocky Mountains, the Andes, the highlands of Africa, cities like Denver, Nairobi, Bogota, suddenly become the world's most important. The architecture of civilization would move entirely inland and upward in elevation. Agriculture would shift toward drought-resistant crops, new varieties for a hot world. Desalination technology, turning salt water into fresh water, becomes civilization's lifeline. The countries that invest fastest in desalination hold the real power in this new era. Vertical farming, growing food in skyscrapers, accelerates beyond what we imagine today. Renewable energy becomes the only option because fossil fuels are largely underwater. Ironically, the disaster that melting ice causes might force the clean energy transition. Nuclear energy would see massive investment as the most reliable clean power source. And here's something genuinely fascinating about the very long-term future of this world. After thousands of years, some scientists believe Earth could actually rebalance itself. So, could this actually happen? That's the question you're asking right now. The good news, all ice melting overnight is physically impossible. It would take thousands of years even with the most extreme warming scenarios. The bad news, we don't need all of it to melt to face catastrophic consequences. Just 1 meter of sea level rise by 2100, which is now considered likely, displaces 230 million people. West Antarctica alone, if destabilized, could add 3 to 5 meters of sea rise. Scientists believe this process may have already begun and cannot be reversed now. The Thwaites Glacier, nicknamed the Doomsday Glacier, is melting faster each year. If it collapses, it could trigger a chain reaction across all of West Antarctica. That's not in thousands of years, potentially in decades, within our lifetime. The scenario in this video isn't science fiction. It's science future, at different speeds. Every fraction of a degree of warming we prevent changes the outcome for millions of people. The difference between 1.5 degrees Celsius and 3 degrees Celsius of warming isn't just numbers on a chart somewhere. It's the difference between Miami being flooded and Miami disappearing entirely. Every action counts. Every election counts. Every choice in the next decade counts. Because the ice is melting right now. Not overnight, like in our story. But it is melting. The question isn't whether it will affect us. The question is how much we let it. Leave your answer in the comments. Do you think we'll act in time? Because the ice doesn't care about politics or economics. It just keeps melting. And the clock is running. Right now. For all of us on this planet together. That's What If. Where we don't just ask questions, we follow them to the end. If this video changed how you see the world, share it with someone who needs to know. Hit that like button. It genuinely helps more people find this content and learn. Subscribe and ring the bell. We post new what if scenarios every single week. Next week, what if AI became smarter than all humans combined? That episode will change how you think about the next 10 years of your own life. We also have an episode on World War III coming very soon. Don't miss that one. And if you want to go deeper on climate science, our global warming episode is linked. Until then, keep asking the questions that matter. The world needs people who wonder. This is What If. See you in the next one. The planet is worth wondering about.